if Kristen shows
We're
up.
6 or 7.
7. We're
Then,
8.
We're- Why not?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna call the January 23rd, 2024 board meeting of the HDC to order. We have an unusual situation in the minute ratification today. Oh, hi, good, thank you. The minutes from our last meeting, if you remember, some of you hadn't had a chance to review them. And so we agreed that we would pass them around an email after the meeting, which we did, and get members of the board to approve or correct them or criticize them. A quorum of people who were present did approve them, so I'm going to enter it into the record that they were approved in email. And I appreciate you following up on that for my misstep with the minutes, emailing. And so now, having said that they have been ratified, the December minutes, I'm moving on to the November minutes, the December minutes today. Can I have a motion to approve the December minutes?
I'll make that.
Martha, first, second? Nick, second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are approving the December minutes. Thank you all. So welcome to the board meeting for January. Phil had me dig out a document. We worked together in the file to dig out a document, and we found a 501c3 founding document from February 17th, 1984. So this is our 40th anniversary of being a 501c3. I believe that the organization was founded in 76, but did not maybe have a status of 501c3. So we're coming up on another anniversary when that happens in a few years. So, I mean, I like to think back on who started the mission for Hudson of business people, businessmen and women, probably mostly men. And, organizing to keep Hudson business growing and jobs and keeping the city vital. And here we are today, doing our best in our own chairs to do that, and I'm proud of what we're doing. So since our last meeting, we launched our partnership with Denham Wolf, who we agreed to proceed with on a 3-month engagement. They, in advance of the meeting, I sent them a lot of the documents that we put together in terms, since we started thinking about the John L. Edwards School, a lot of documents organizationally in the feasibility study and all of the inspection reports that we have. And John Friedman suggested that I also include our bylaws and our any founding documents that we have so they can understand our mission, which I did. And they had that in advance of when they came on the 11th. They came up on the train. And I picked Priya and Jean up on when they got off the train. And I know you all know this experience, but it's wonderful when it happens. When somebody new comes to Hudson and you pick them up at the train and they get off the train all glittery and like, oh, the ride is so great, the river, and this train station is so beautiful, and oh, this is such a nice city. It's just so, I mean, everyone should have to do that once a day because it's so uplifting, and it kind of reminds us what a great place we live in. So after I picked them up, I loaded them into my car and gave them the 10-minute tour of Hudson, drove them through the way that the grid is laid out, the streets, the neighborhoods, and how walkable, even though they were riding, how close it is to the top of Warren Street. Then I took them over into where John L. Edwards is and showed them how the schools both are just connected up the road from that, and they thought that was amazing. They had a lot of good questions, and they were very enthusiastic about the architecture and just the smallness and accessibility of the city. So that was good. Then we came back to the office and we had a luncheon meeting where we exchanged, or members of the board. There were some of us were present, and we also included a couple of people who've been interested in collaborating alongside on this, and that's Jen Crawford, who is the owner of Crawford Engineering, David Crawford, her company that she purchased in 22. And we included Chip Ball, who's an architect in Annapolis and also in Hudson. He did serve on the Hudson Preservation Commission with Paul and with Phil and is very knowledgeable about Hudson. So he has participated, and also Jess joined us, which and Jan came on the tour too. So, and Joe Rapp was on FaceTime. So it was a very good tour. We did find that there was water on the second floor, quite a substantial amount of water, and some of the ceiling tiles had come down, and we determined, I called the facilities guy afterwards, actually the real estate guy did, but then the facilities guy for the Hudson City School District called me and said, we discovered it's not the roof, there's a trapdoor up there that had blown open in the storm and a lot of water to come in the trapdoor. So if you remember, that was a really heavy rainstorm. So they've got that under control, and I think it's good. So they went back, they formulated an idea for how we should proceed, how we need to focus ourselves. And their suggestion was that we form 4 what they call tracks, which are nothing more than committees, that focus on really focused areas of making this happen. And we'll talk about those 4 later in the agenda. But anyway, they came up with that, and we established a Thursday at 4 p.m. Zoom call that we're going to do weekly that will, some weeks it'll be pinging through in 1 hour. It'll be pinging through all the 4 tracks. In other weeks, it might focus on one that is especially important that week. So any of you can tune into that Zoom call if you want to audit that and just kind of stay up to speed on what's going on. I think that would be very useful if you have the time. They are really good about keeping things to time. So they have an hour set aside for that call, and 10 minutes before the end of our first call, which was last Thursday, to set up the format, they were saying we have 10 minutes left. So, I think that they're very good about this, and I think that they understand that our capacity is limited. So that's where we are there.
Was that Thursday, you said?
It's Thursday at 4, every Thursday. Let's see what else. We're actually preparing for our annual audit, which comes along. Like all of you, our annual meeting is March 26th, which is a Tuesday. It's a little bit longer than the usual meeting, and we will have lunch for that meeting. So if you could put that on your calendar, that's kind of a summary of where we've been, what we did, and some sort of aspirational ideas for going forward. It's an important meeting to attend, and if you could just mark that in your calendar, that'd be good. We did have what?
When is that again?
March 26th, Tuesday. That's the 4th Tuesday of March. The auditors will be making their presentation at that meeting, and the audit is underway. Phil and Martha and myself met with UHY, who are our accountants, and they're on board. And we met with we had a Julie Marshall from Harris Beach on the phone. She handles the ABO component of our filing, and she's on board, and she's provided me with what things she needs. And I think that everything should go very smoothly this year. Last year we had a few hiccups, and I think we were well ahead of that this year. So I think there'll be no problem on all those fronts filing that. We held our first Let's Talk Business Roundtable on Tuesday, January 9th. We are collaborating with the Hudson Business Coalition on this because they have the most complete email list of businesses in Hudson, and they're doing the sending to this list. It would take us, I'd like us to have a list, but it'll take us a while to compile that. So we're starting in collaboration, and it did go very well. We had Richard Bodine, who owns Hudson Home, came and talked in this room. We recorded it, so we have it, put it up on our YouTube channel. So if people don't get to it, I'll be sending that link out after these happen, so that if you want to watch it, you can, or you can just go there. He was very informative. He's a 20-year-old business here. He told how he came here as a weekender. They had a business in New Jersey. They had 2 businesses, a design business, and then they decided to do a retail business, but they didn't mix them. They were in a little tiny shop, and there were business decisions along the way. How do we move to a bigger space? Should we? What kind of inventory? And he talked all about that, and I think it was a very fascinating share of a real, legitimate, successful Hudson business. So the people that came, there weren't that many, but the people that did come seemed to have good questions. And for a first one, I think it was a good shot. We're putting our second one together, which will take place in February, and I'll mention that when we get to that in the agenda. I think it was a success, anyway. The Winter Walk collaboration had a postmortem. If you remember, the collaboration this year is the first year that Hudson Hall included Hudson Business Coalition, HDC, we contributed, and also the city played a big part with Rob Perry and Michael Hoffman, who was really effective. We all sat around the table and talked about how great we were and how much fun we had and how it came out so well. But we did have a few criticisms, some things that we'd like to think about changing and things that maybe Hudson Hall would like to downsize from doing. And so I'm organizing a focus group of creative people in Hudson who know Winter Walk and might want some of the shopkeepers who really go all out, who might want to contribute their creative ideas to thinking about rethinking Winter Walk, what should stay, what could maybe we lose, and how could it evolve a little bit. And so that's happening probably in a week or so. I'm rounding up those people now. That's pretty much the work that we've been doing. Of course, we've been working on going with, other things like the Oakdale Plunge, and Phil's got us organized with that as a sponsor. And I have had a lot of calls. I'm glad you're here, Mayor. I'm glad you're here. I have had a lot of talks in the last period of time, including with Jen Crawford and with Dunham Wolf and with other members of the board, Crystal and John Friedman, about the Hudson's, the state pollution discharge elimination system known as SPEEDY's situation in Hudson. And I'm not knowledgeable in this, so I figured that, because it had come up so much, the conversations that were brought up had to do with the development that's trying to proceed that can't get past this conflict. So I did speak with Rob Perry yesterday, and he was very informative about what he's doing, what the city's doing, and how to think about it. And I thought I would just, while it's not really on our mission, it is if the development of Hudson can't continue to grow. So just in the most simple way, I'm going to explain what Rob told me, and so we can all be kind of moving forward on this. The Hudson system's sewer processing capacity is 25 million gallons a day, which we mostly only use 5 million a day. However, because the wastewater from rain and snowmelt goes into the sewer system and is not separated with the current weather and the frequently exceeded capacity, which is a problem with sewage runoff into the Hudson. The Hudson septic and waste system is 200 years old plus, maybe, or minus, and has had repairs over the years. The stormwater was included into the system originally to move the waste through to the treatment facility and at times to the river, which is kind of scary, but that was the old way. The Environmental Protection Agency is a federal agency, and they have been pushing on the Departments of Environmental Conservation to remedy situations like this in many towns in 10 regions in New York, up and down the river. Not just river towns like ours, but also Philmont, inland towns too. So everybody is working hard on struggling with this. It's not just Hudson. The remedy to this problem, Rob estimates, will take 2 or 3 years to repair it. The current system has to be mapped. It has to keep functioning. It has to be mapped, and it has to have a new design to be conceived and then implemented. So that's at least 2 or 3 years of thinking and working, he thinks. He estimates it will cost about $180 million, and he has applied for and received a federal grant for $60 million to begin with, and will apply for 2 more years for the same amount to accomplish this. In the meantime, the city is considering offsets for new build-outs of 4 to 1. The planning board and city attorney Andy Howard are working on these issues, and Crystal and John are also quite involved with them. So we might ask you to keep us informed as things occur that you see or things that you think we should be aware of. I think that would really be helpful.
I will say,
You want to say?
and just the communication from the city has not been great on this.
Okay.
So it's really like those of us that are getting information are getting it through other engineers for direct conversations with the DEC.
Okay.
I don't think the last communication from the city, I think, was in October, just sort of giving everybody notice that this was an issue, but it would be helpful if we had more communication from the city as to what was going on, because everything we're getting is hearsay and secondhand.
I said to Rob, would you be willing to have a conversation with us? Would you be willing to come and talk to anyone who wants to know more about this in terms of, what they can do to help or what we can do? I asked him if we could write a grant that would help him, and he said, he made a joke, of course, because that's Rob, but he said like, what, for 10 million? And I said, well, no, we could power up. We could power up a thing. But, yeah, I think that would be good to know a little more.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll work together, Kamal, on how we can do that, so people feel better, yeah. Okay, of course, while I had Rob on the phone, I wasn't gonna not ask about some other things that are going on, and I know we all, we have an invested interest in this, but the NYSEG gas line replacements, he did confirm they do what they do when they do it, and they are their own people. I said, he explained to me that we all remember when it started in the I think it was the late summer or the fall, and then we hit winter. His policy, the city's policy, is not to do any road work in the winter. They usually have a hiatus for the winter to not do anything for snow reasons, plow reasons, and all that. And they would start back up again in the spring, but it was the city's decision that it would be better for them to continue the work now, get it done when there's not so much dust kickup and when it's slow winter, instead of starting again in the spring and having businesses be inconvenienced again, at the beginning of hopefully their spring, summer season. So that's why it's going on now. He did say that when they're finished, they will, from where they made the cuts into the line, they will pave the street again from the edge of the cuts to the curb, just in towards the curb. They won't redo the whole street. So that should start as soon as they're finished, which he hopes is before spring. So we talked about the bridge repair on Front Street. The mayor, you should tell about this. You received an approval to go ahead with it, right? At the end of the year.
Nicely.
And
Yeah.
he signed off on it and said, yes, let's proceed. And as you know, it starts construction in February, according to Rob. And it's a Colarusso project, so Paul should be able to keep us abreast of the work, and we're excited about that. It's so exciting to have this bridge, which has been closed for 7 years, and I've used as a U-turn for like 100,000 times. 11?
Almost.
Okay,
Wow.
to have it come back online, which is great.
Yeah.
We're lucky to get it back. So that's my remarks. I'm bringing you up to speed with what's happening, and I think without any other questions about those remarks, I'm gonna turn it over to Phil for the financials.
Okay.
Thank you.
I did email out the docs for the meeting today, but knowing that that's an imperfect science, I have paper copies if somebody wants, either now or later in the meeting. Just raise your hand and I'll get them to you. If not, I'll just go forward. As Chris mentioned, we did agree to go forward with the fiscal sponsorship of the plunge, and I met with a couple of the folks at the bank and so on, and they're set up. So I'm really happy that we're providing that kind of support, and they were really happy that we were also. In terms of the audit, the first set of document submissions from us to the auditors, to UHY, is today. Whatever they had requested on the initial deliverable went out yesterday.
Great,
So we're
ahead.
we were ahead last time.
I know,
There was a login issue.
but we fell flat.
No, we didn't. We were on
The
time.
lease hung us up last year.
We were on time. Huh?
The lease hung us up for a bit last year.
Yeah.
There were a couple of weirdnesses, but it wasn't about the submission. The financials were in the month before, so what I'm saying, Chris.
Phil, you're doing great.
Not necessary now. Damage is already done. On the,
His feelings are already.
I know, I'm wounded. On the, I was reading this book about fragility, but I won't go into it.
No, I think we could save that for the big finish.
But it's interesting. There's nothing of significance to report on any of the financial statements. We did move some money around. We took approximately 50 grand out of the money market fund at the broker. And you won't see it on this report, but it's there and distributed to our checking, because we got bills coming from the from the consultants and whatnot. We want to be able to pay them on a timely basis. Other than that, there are literally no changes, other than that, and income, continuing to come in, from our investments, and no variation in our investment, policy or allocation model. So with that, I ask that you approve, the budget documents, statement of activity as of December 31, 2023. And that's my ask. May I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Paul. May I have a second?
A second.
In favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you all.
Thank you, Phil.
That's all I got.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm gonna, move into the tracks that Dunham Wolf is proposing for us to focus our thinking. And there's 4 of them. We talked about maybe 6 of them, but with the capacity that we have as professional people that do this, on the side of our regular world, I made them think about it in 4 tracks. So some of them have a wider variety of thinking in them, and others of them are very focused. So the first one is the City of Hudson, the role of the city in the transaction, the strategy to work with the city on thinking about this project, and also the public relations of the residents of the city and understanding what it is we would be doing with the building. And that has everything to do with, the city as an occupant, the sale of other assets in city buildings and putting them back on the tax rolls, helping to think about how that might work. And also, any political concerns that the city might have having to do with, bringing this building back as a mixed-use building. And then, of course, there's a required vote for approval of the project, and we'd have to strategize how that would go from the people in the school district have to vote on this as a sale. The second tract is the non-city, and then I know this is not a verb, thank heavens John isn't here because he doesn't like this, tenanting strategy, which is basically, we have been thinking pretty hard about this, and we have reached out to a lot of different folks about it. We have, as you guys know, a letter of intent from Carly Drummer at Columbia Green for use of some space in the building for skills that have to do with getting certificates and that put people in the job market. The hospital is I'm reaching out to Dr. Ushiel and talking with her a little bit about ways the hospital might be involved in, and there are people on this committee that are now going to pick that up and continue to pursue it. We did have a meeting with Sean Rowland of the Pocketbook Factory. They're working with Columbia Economic Development on that building, and they have a job requirement. They have committed in their application for 60 hospitality jobs. And so they don't know where they're going to get those people. So they would potentially be interested in participating. And that's really early stages. And then how we use the shared spaces, the cafeteria, the locker rooms, pink and blue, and the big cafeteria and the kitchen space. So who could come in and be happy to activate those spaces? Then there's the John L. Edwards building itself. This is a building committee. These are physical issues having to do with the sewer capacity, the potential fuel tank, which we think is buried. We're not sure. There's no documentation about that. The building condition generally and the remediation that would be required having to do with sprinklering it. It was not a sprinklered building, so it would have to be sprinklered. And all the asbestos remediation from the tiles. I mean, the floor tiles are asbestos, but they're fine. But the ceiling tiles and any other historic protection of the building that we should be thinking about, that's part of this committee. Also, the potential purchase price of the building, and also the school board. So that is itself a pretty significant nut. And then the final committee would be the financial and governance issues, establishing an internal decision-making process of the board, how we would be moving forward with with this project, and also determining how we engage into what level the external characters that we're engaging to be in the building, what's our relationship with them, and then other potential sources of capital, where we could get money to fund this building. They have a wider range of sourcing, and I have recently found myself in touch with a collection of people who fund projects like this that we have yet to scrape, and I will forward them those names, and we'll see if we can't put them into the flow. And then any alternate people that might want to acquire this building, not us, acquire this building and develop it as we're envisioning it. So those are the 4 areas. And if some of you are already committed to working on this, and I appreciate that, but if anybody wants to find their niche in here and, jump in, there's usually one call in the week that is just about the committee, and then there's work that gets done, and then the Thursday 4:00 call happens. So that's the way it's set up. So, have a think about it and see what you might want to do. Okay? Any questions about that?
Just one comment, Chris. I know the consultants use the term, they used it in our last meeting, governance.
Yeah.
With 2 different meanings. They were really talking about structuring the work and the workload in a way that's super efficient and gets stuff done and doesn't burn us out. So that's one aspect. From the board position in terms of governance, just to reassure folks, I know you know this, but this is not a side hustle. Anything that we do above relatively small dollars is reviewed and approved by the board, and everything we do in this project, where we can, we're gonna review and approve it with the board. Just saying.
Yeah.
That's our governance policy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. I do think, we have a 3-month commitment with them, and, as some of these things go, you wonder what's going to happen in 3 months. But I have to say that I feel like they are so on top of it and so, enthusiastic about keeping the ball rolling that I'm feeling good about that. So it's not like me going like, what's happening? It's coming from their side. So that's very, I feel good about that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I sent an email to Jess and she didn't get it until this morning. But here she is. And I thought it would be, I met with Jess on Friday just to get an idea of the landscape of, well, first of all, how we are going to be paying her, which is an important piece of our relationship. But also, just to hear her thinking on, the landscape and where she and Jan are working together on grant work. And I thought maybe it would be good if you could just give us a little sketch about where you are, what you're thinking.
Sure. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
So,
Did you get a new computer, by the way?
this is brand new.
When she met me on Friday, she was a little late because her dog, her puppy, chewed the screen of her computer and wrecked the display.
Oh, God.
And then her husband said, too much information, but
No.
her husband said, how could you let that happen? And like he
Just
left,
like a man, right?
yeah.
Who am I gonna blame?
He left the room, and when he came back, the dog did the same thing to his computer 2 minutes later.
Oh,
The dog heard it.
3-month-old. She's now, within 20 minutes, she took down 2 notebooks. So, same corner too. So I have
Nice. Brand new.
one. Anyway, as Chris said, I've been tasked with researching grant opportunities that might be appropriate to acquire and rehabilitate the JLE building. And I've been surveying the grant landscape, which is vast, and there are very many opportunities that are available. A lot of them are very separate, very programmatically based. So I've just assembled a list of good fits that would be appropriate to start with. So on the list are things like the New York State Education Department. A lot of banks have economic mobility, community needs-based grants. And as we've talked about, at the federal level, the HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, because Hudson has fewer than 50,000 residents, their community development block grants are out of reach. But this project may be eligible to apply for some comprehensive structural improvements funding from them. like the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program is a good one, which provides funding to initiate recapitalization investments designed from inception around deep retrofits focused on innovative energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions reductions, et cetera. And these comprehensive awards are designed for the widest range of properties, including those that have not yet been developed. And so I'm exploring what's possible there.
Yeah.
But that's the federal
That's good.
level. The best fit regionally for New York State is actually the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA rural development programs like the community facilities and multifamily housing programs involve the construction of new buildings or renovation of existing facilities. And funds can be used to purchase, construct, and/or improve essential community facilities. And pay for equipment, pay for related project expenses. And community-based nonprofit corporations are encouraged to apply. And those are for fewer than 20,000 residents. So that's a good one to look
Yeah,
at.
that is a good one.
And then there are a couple hyper-local. There's a Kubota rather, it's a tractor company
Yes.
that's all over the place. They have a hometown proud grant. I think that would be a good starting point.
Wow.
And that's a $100,000 award for community revitalization. And that deadline is March 31st. So we have some time to think about that, and maybe that could be a good way to
Get
to
going.
begin an
Yeah.
application. And then the other broader, bigger grants are on a rolling basis.
That's good. And what's the award time from application to in a,
It really depends. I mean, there are some, I've got one education grant on here, which has a November 30th, 2026
Whoa.
deadline. So, that's on the outside edge, but most of these take about 3 months to
Yeah,
hear back
okay, good.
and get started.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Great.
Any questions on grants? If anybody comes across a grant that they think might be good, Jess, you could pitch it to Jess and see if she knows about it or what she thinks about it.
Yes.
Or Jan, together, they're working together.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Moving on, I jumped ahead and described the first business roundtable pretty much to the completion of it. The second roundtable is 2/6 on the Tuesday, the 6th of February at 9 a.m. And we're going to be having it in the Park Theater up at the top. I have spoken with Bob Provost, who's the CEO of the New York State Tourism Industry Association, President, CEO, and he is more than happy to come and talk to us about New York State tourism and specifically give us some case studies on what makes tourism, grow, what tourism adds to a community. First and foremost, as part of his pitch is he doesn't believe in tourism on top of a community. It needs to be embedded in, and the community benefits in so many ways from it. So he is coming, and it will be, we're gonna send the invite out, and we'll send you all an invite if you wanna come and join us. That would be great. It will be archived if you can't make it. So, I think that's exciting. I did meet yesterday with Mike Tucker, and he gave me some stats, and now I lost them in my pile here, on tourism in New York State, and it is making a comeback. Paper. Where did it go? Here it is. Just briefly, the traveler spending in Columbia County in 2022 exceeded the pre-pandemic levels, according to the recent report. Visitors spent $237 million in Columbia County in 2022, and 177 million spent since 2019. Columbia County's travel agency growth in this period was the greatest among counties classified both as Capital Region and Hudson Valley. Tourism spending in Columbia County generated over 11 million in state taxes and over 13 million in local taxes last year. This represents a tax savings of about $993 per household. The annual economic impact generated by tourism in Columbia County included 106 million in labor income and over 2,400 jobs. Tourism-related industries in the report analysis include lodging, recreation, food, beverage, retail, service stations, transportation, and second homes. Tourism-related activity accounted for 11.8% of all employment in Columbia County and 9.9% of all labor income. So statewide visitor spending in 22 was nearly 79 billion, surpassing 2019 for the first time since the pandemic slowed the activity in 2020. New York State benefited from about 291 million visitors last year. Visitor spending generated about 20 billion in government tax revenue and supported 40 billion in labor in New York State.
291 million visitors?
Yeah. So one of the grants, this is important because one of the grants that we're looking at is a tourism-based grant that if you can demonstrate creating, and this is why I got in touch with him in the first place. If you can demonstrate building something like Winter Walk, for instance, is just as an example, an event or a reason to get tourism to come to New York State for the first time or experience an event in New York State, there's a significant amount of money available for that kind of thing. So while we don't wanna, jam Hudson with a giant unmanageable something that we get money for, we if we're clever and think about this a little more, perhaps there is something that we could come up with. And I'm interested in his case studies, what other towns have done to generate manageable tourism that supports the economy of the town. So I think he could be very good. He's very enthusiastic. So that's why let's talk business tourism. Okay,
300 million.
any questions on that, any of that? Anybody wanna add anything? Yeah. All right, new business. If you all remember, a while back, we were talking with Chief Moore about the surveillance cameras and that HDC might want to contribute to buying those cameras. In the meantime, the city has bought the cameras and they have them, the police department has them. And I spoke with Chief Moore about it yesterday, and he said what would really help is that they need to get them up, and the budget to put them up is unclear. He said he could get me the numbers hopefully by today, but apparently he wasn't able to do
Chris,
that.
these are around the station or in different
In
locations?
different locations.
Through the town?
Yeah, through the
Where they
town.
would like to have,
To the time.
oh, cool, I got it.
He said if I could just put up two, like one down on Front Street and one up somewhere at the top, just get two going. Near Proprietors Hall, maybe that was where he said maybe it would be good, where people come into town. And I said, well, how many are there? And he said, I think there's 10. And so he was gonna get me an estimate, and he probably will do that in the meantime. That might be, it's not a DPW install, it's an SNW install, so that's why he doesn't, so I would hope to be able to tell you that, so I just wanna let you know that's happening, and we're investigating that a little bit more in further detail, okay? Any questions on that?
Investigating in the sense of.
What it would cost to get them up?
Yeah, and then potentially thinking about whether we write a check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did he mention if there was like long-term maintenance, like because it runs off a Wi-Fi feed or a live feed or recording, like is there long-term maintenance of the cameras, like you have that initial
We
setup?
wondered what kind of cameras they were gonna
Yeah.
get, and this is going back some, and my memory isn't as good as it used to be, but I think that, everybody actually, Nick looked into it a little bit, and two other people, technologists, looked into it, and the ones that they are getting are very good that way. They have very low maintenance, and they also have, they can be live watched, I guess, which is the other piece of it, and not just recorded what happened.
And
look
if I
back.
remember, I think with S&W, there'll be a service contract anyway
Okay,
for them to maintain them,
Yeah, because
the uplinks and so forth, yeah.
that's what I was thinking, but like whenever you do like a security system, like on a large site, you have to have that like 12-foot pole where it's fixated to, and there's the long-term
yeah,
like operation if you have
And
to.
they were looking for a place for that antenna a year ago,
yeah,
or whatever it is, that pole.
Yeah, I mean, each
Try to find
camera, like, when I've done it, I would usually put the cameras on its own direct pole, because then the pole acts as the thread for the wire
Yeah.
down to then connect to the rest of the system. I mean, you can probably like mount them on buildings, but the problem is it's private property most of the area, so.
Were they looking on Providence Hall, Nick, or is that another antenna that was going
I'm
up?
trying to remember.
he mentioned
Yeah.
Providence Hall to me.
I
when
think they were
talked.
looking there, and they were also reaching out to building owners with buildings that were appropriate and wouldn't mind having it
Yeah,
installed
Yeah.
on the roof.
Providence Hall is higher than you think. If you put a mast on that.
Yeah.
Could do, okay.
Well, and the chimney's covered in a plastic tarp. There's that.
Decorative play.
Yeah, so that's ongoing. We did receive, just end of meeting finish up, we did receive a tax bill from the town of Greenport for property that we have in the Hudson River that Phil and Paul looked into that. Phil, would you like to comment on that?
There's not a lot to say. I called the assessor. And, Paul, I think had the same conversation with him. And said, you know that we're tax exempt. And he said, you're calling me for $22? Is that, it wasn't, I didn't feel welcome,
To fight.
to continue to have conversations, so, we could compromise, not necessarily beneficially to me, not on money, but I said I'd go to his office, and get schooled in
How things have changed.
how exactly you tax a tax exempt entity, and always something to learn. So I'm gonna go see the dude.
And the amusing part of it is this parcel is underwater and what we're being taxed on is the fire fee,
Department,
the fire department.
which is even funnier.
Can we give the property to Greenport? Underwater, what do we need it for?
Oh.
Oysters.
Our oyster farm, did you know our oyster farm?
We're looking at oyster.
Out of this river?
Yeah.
I think
Aren't you
it's
supposed to like
hysterical.
just eat everything but the fatty part of the fish? That's what I read, I think somewhere on a.
You're not supposed to eat any of it.
No, I wouldn't.
So that's all the news I have for the January meeting. If any, is there a public comment? Is the public online? Does anyone want to say?
No.
No public comment?
All owled out.
Okay, yeah, so, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Paul and Martha, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, thank you all, appreciate your work.